Nothing in this world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. It's from Calvin Coolidge. So today we're going to have 5 ways that you can grow in your persistence. Persistence, and if you stick around to the end, we have a bonus tip as well, but persistence is one of those unspoken leadership traits that really pay off dividends in effort. So, Jared, you got a challenge for us.
Yeah, the challenge in staying persistent is that it requires intentionality and energy. I think when we think of persistence, for Bill and I, as we were fleshing this out, we were thinking through it, intentionality and energy came to our minds. Some of the challenges in staying persistent. I mean, think about when's the last time you went through a pretty serious setback? How do we view setbacks? Do they take the wind right out of your sails? Of course they do. But what do we do with that? How do we react to that? What's our default mode when you hit a setback? Another challenge to being persistent would be attitudes. Are we naturally kind of pessimistic? Are we naturally optimistic?
Ooh.
What are our default attitudes? I mean, do we know ourselves well enough to say, hey, when I'm thinking about being persistent, how do I keep my own attitudes in check? You could be someone who you're too much of a go-getter. You need to listen to the voices within your circles that are telling you, hey, whoa, slow down just a little bit. Maybe that's the advice you need to take. So staying persistent it can be tough. And the other challenge that I see, I think Bill has seen this too, is habits. Are we creating habits of persistence? Because that takes time. Sometimes, again, when we think of persistence, it boils down to our default modes, our default habits, and do they need to be addressed and changed? What kind of habits do I have? And a lot of times for myself, I know I've shared this with Bill. I think I've shared it before on the podcast, but I can be more of that person who looks at the negative rather than the positive. So creating a healthy habit for me is regular meetings with people who don't think like I do, right? And challenge that part of who I am.
Yeah, and there's some circumstances where I will be pessimistic pretty regularly, and there's other circumstances where I'll be more optimistic, right? And I agree with you. I think finding someone who is more optimistic in the areas that you tend to be is a good balance, right?
Vice versa, yeah.
Connecting with those people, that is a big challenge. The attitude, the setbacks, the habits.
Definitely.
Yeah. And but consistency, or persistence triumphs intensity.
Right.
So rather than being super intense, it's a matter of being consistent, because your consistency will build the momentum for you. And that's where persistence is really that secret ingredient for leaders.
Yeah.
Right? Just keep on moving forward.
Right.
So it's a key virtue in leadership, as I mentioned. But a couple other thoughts before we dive into our 5 areas of growth in persistence.
I'm excited about these 5 areas. I think they're going to be really helpful.
Yeah, I agree. Perseverance precedes persistence.
You're going to have to flesh that out.
Yeah. So perseverance is, okay, this is difficult, I'm going to push through.
Yeah.
Right? Persistence is doing that every time.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's the consistency behind it. So it's perseverance precedes persistence, but persistence precedes success. You're not going to meet anybody who's a successful leader who does not exercise on a regular basis their persistence. So it's just one of those key ingredients to be able to move the ball down the field to accomplish organizational goals, whatever it may be. It's not easy. It's going to take persistence. You're going to have people to convince to do things this way. You're going to have hurdles that come up, and we can't do that because this is our lawyer, the legal department saying that's a no-go, and our HR department, that's a no-go. And then, okay, that's the reason why we can't do it, but what are the reasons, or what are the ways we can do it, right? And that's where persistence comes in. It's what's going to move you through the hurdles and those setbacks. But it also requires some courage, doesn't it? I mean, to be persistent, my default response is to give up and give in and go hide in a corner. But over the years, developing this muscle of persistence has really helped me become a better leader and more effective for the organizations where I serve. Whether that be our faith organization in our church, or whether that's a project I'm working on at work, or just my daily main responsibilities at work, or working through disagreements with family members, my
parenting.
wife, and parenting.
Yeah.
And so persistence, it's really a superpower that we should all practice and get better at. So
let's talk about the 5 steps to grow our persistence. Taking them one at a time. Make sure you stick around. There is a bonus one at the end. I'm excited about a couple of these. So let's jump into this. Number 1, we think a big step to grow in our persistence is know the value of effort. Know the value of effort itself. So I'm going to let Bill flesh this out for a minute. Bill, tell us, what exactly does this mean to know the value of effort itself?
it's kind of what we talked about. It's a mindset. It's an attitude. It's knowing what's on the other side of yes. If I do this, if this is successful, what's on the other side of yes? You think of someone who goes to the gym for physical fitness. What's in the other side of my physical fitness? Well, I can do more. I can be healthier. I can do some of the hobbies. Feel better, be more active, more capable, stay healthier longer into my later years of life, whatever it may be. What's on the other side of that yes? So there is value behind the effort of what we're trying to accomplish. What is that value? Answering that question, what is the value of my effort behind this? If it's a yes, if it's a win, if it's a success, what does that bring to the table? So
that's a great question. It's a great mindset. And I mean, I don't want to give anything away, but I mean, for me, when I think of knowing the value of the effort, sometimes, I'd probably say most of the time, it's growth for me, because I'm looking at the value of my efforts. If this works, I'm going to grow. If this doesn't work, if I have the right mindset, I'm going to grow anyway, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Know the value of the effort. Is it growth? I mean, is it success? What's on the other side of yes? Number 2 is a step to grow in your persistence is develop. This is so good. Develop a willing to pay the price mindset.
Yeah.
That's deep, but it's also...
It's hard.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing. But if we're able to sit down and say, okay, am I willing to pay the price? Is that my mindset? John Maxwell says, if you're persistent, you will get it. If you're consistent, you will keep it.
Yeah.
Just a great way of showing you what persistence can look like, within that context of being consistent and such. But
we all have to answer the question, what is the price? All right, what am I paying? Is it my time, my effort, my sweat equity, my working with this person on this project who we clash a little bit with, or what is that what is that price that we have to pay? Is if I'm taking time, spending my time here, I'm taking it away from what? Right? And is that
worth an opportunity cost
worthwhile,
almost.
right? Yeah. It's also like a piece of priority management, right?
A little bit of that too,
I don't believe in time management. I believe in priority management. I can't create more time, right? There's only a finite amount of time in my day. Yeah. So I have to set my priorities of what I'm going to do that day. And one of those things that I answer when I set those, what's the price, right? If I don't do this, if this takes priority, why is it priority? And what's the price behind not doing that today? Maybe I have a higher priority for today, but I can do that this week. It's lower priority. Maybe I can get that done later, kind of thing.
Yeah. So I think too. You can look at this in the context. I don't know. For me, I like movies and entertainment and things like that.
Yep.
And one of the greatest analogies is you could pick really most of the superhero movies. I like Lord of the Rings. I think of like Frodo, and it's like on the way to to destroy this ring, the price he had to pay. And the longer he kept at it, obviously he had challenges. Obviously, we think Sam is the hero here, but he was willing to pay the price. Yeah. And I think that's just a great word or a great picture analogy to look at. Are we willing to pay the price?
Well, just if you give me a little practical example, I'll go back to when I was younger, just graduating high school. I was a bit overweight after high school. And I got a job working for a landscaper.
The landscaper, yeah.
Right?
Okay.
He's a landscaper tree surgeon. His name was Frank Cover. And he worked us. He worked us hard to get the job done. And I've never worked that hard in my life. But at the end of that summer, a couple of things happened to me. One was physical and one was mental. The physical aspect, I realized I dropped 40 pounds because we were working so hard, 8 hours a day, lugging heavy, branches and tree logs and brush and all of that. The mental thing is, man, nothing else is going to seem like hard work after this. And now I look back the things I have to do. I'm like, well, this is nothing compared to that. And this is so much easier. So that value of price has changed my mindset, saying that was way difficult, but this is nothing compared to that. So yeah, if I can do that,
I can do this.
I can do this,
Yeah.
right? So that's kind of what we're talking about here, that willingness to pay the price and the benefit of measuring it and saying yes to it. What's on the other side of yes? What's the value?
I like to use my wife too on this. I may have shared this in a previous episode some time ago, but my lady, as a full-time, she has a full-time career and she's a full-time mom. We have, two daughters. She's a wife, obviously. And so with her busyness of life, she wanted to go back to school. She wanted to finish her college and get her degree. And she had to sit down, with me and the girls and kind of count out this price. What's the price gonna be?
Oh, wow.
And we did that kind of as a family. And of course, the girls and I encouraged her, we can pick up some slack. We do some things you normally do, which in the long run, she didn't really even skip a beat. But her price was her evening hours. She would do everything normal until it came to, I would clean up dinner, and after dinner, she would spend an hour or so with the kids. They'd go off to bed, and she would take like 9 p.m. through 11 p.m. 2 hours almost every night to do online classes.
Wow.
And she got it done. So after, like a 12-hour day between work and parenting and being a wife, she did that. She did I think it was a 3.5-ish year program in about 3 years.
Wasn't it?
No, it was a bachelor's.
Was it?
Yeah, she went and got her bachelor's in business leadership of all things. And so we got to have her on the podcast.
Yeah,
so she did a wonderful job of getting that done. And she graduated summa cum laude, so with like highest honors.
Wow.
So that to us was a big family win. But she had to sit down and pay the price and ask, what's the value of my effort? What's the price I'm going to pay? What's on the other side of yes? And that helped her land like her dream job, but she's working right now. Because she did that, she was able to have that in her toolbox as a stepping stone to getting the job that she has today.
That's a great example. Yeah. And
are you willing to pay the
congratulations,
price?
Allie.
Yeah, exactly. So good job, hun, if you're going to listen to this one.
So that's number 2, develop a willing to pay the price mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3 is embracing failure, as we talked about just a moment ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Failure is, a failing forward is the common phrase. And Maxwell wrote a book on that as well. Great book if you want to read more about it. But it's developing the mindset of being able to learn from the failure and take that new information, that new knowledge or skill you developed, and moving you further down. It may be a 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, but moving it. And the failure is not, if you fail, it doesn't mean you're a failure, right?
I've heard us say that before.
It's an opportunity to learn. So having that mindset of embracing failure helps us build our persistence, right? It's just another stepping stone along the way to help us get there.
Yeah. I think this is super important because, well, let me add something to this. Third step to grow in our persistence is to embrace failure. I really don't want to miss out in saying that. Make sure you're surrounded by people who, when you hit those seasons, something doesn't go the way it was supposed to go, your setback is you're looking at it as a massive failure. It's so important, I know for me personally, to have people in my corner who don't let me stay in that spot. We don't want to minimize the effect that some of these failures have on us, especially as leaders. When you really put your heart and soul into something and it doesn't work out, man, that hurts and that's frustrating. So if you don't have people in your corner, to say, hey, look, you and I have talked this through. We've been here before. What's your mindset right now? And that's just a reminder. I know Bill's done that for me. Other people have done that for me. And it really helps to get back up off the ground, making sure you fall forward so that you at least gain some ground. And Marcus Aurelius, actually, the great Roman leader, he has this quote. He says, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." And I think when I think of this quote, it's yes, sometimes what stands in the way is our own failure.
Yeah.
But failure can build resistance if we learn to embrace it and learn from it. So have people in your corner that help you embrace failure and learn from failure.
Yeah, the downside there, and I've been guilty of this several times in my life, is falling to the victim mentality. Oh, I'm not going to try anymore because I'm just going to fail at
I
it.
sucked at this. It didn't work.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So why should I bother again? And I tell you, it took, and it's still something I practice. I haven't arrived. I'm still practicing that, right? But I'm better every time at it. And I've grown extensively because I've embraced failure. I've also become less afraid of feedback and my performance at work. And okay, it's feedback, right? It's information, not opinion, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it is opinion, but I'm going to look for the gold nuggets. That's the factual aspect of it. And okay, is that factual true? Okay, yeah, then that's an opportunity for me to grow. All right, I'm going to do better at that. And that has encouraged me to not fall into that victim mindset. Woe is me.
Yeah. And you have a quote on obstacles.
Yeah, obstacles make us who we are. You know, it's what we face and how we respond to it forms us. You know, I've said this before. My wife had cancer twice, and that journey going through that formed part of us of who we are.
Yeah, for sure.
I've been laid
Definitely.
off due to the economy a couple times in my life, and that formed who I am, you know, and I've had this injury, this illness, and all those obstacles, those hurdles, and moving and growing through them, not letting them stop me, those obstacles have made me who I am. So yeah, that's my quote. Obstacles make us who we are.
And number four,
Number four.
Is know your why. So one of the steps to grow our persistence is knowing our why. We have talked a little bit about this before. You know, this comes up in parenting sometimes. When you're frustrated, there used to be a parenting way of doing things where it was just the only answer that you ever got was because I said so, right? Because I said so. Because I said so.
Yeah.
And there is a time and a place. I'll admit that you just need to do something because you were told to do it. Like there is a time and a place for that, but knowing why is important. Bill, share. I know you've done this probably 2 or 3 times by now on our podcast, but just briefly share your approach to parenting again, because I think that'll help here.
Yeah. So when my kids come, hey, Dad, when they were younger, they're all grown now, mature young adults. But when they were younger, they said, Dad, can we do this? I would first tell them why the answer is going to be what it's about to be.
Or help them come to that conclusion.
Help them come to that conclusion. Then I'd give them the answer. So comparison. Dad, can we go to our friend's house Wednesday night? If I do it as most people do, it's like, no, you can't. Answer. Because why? We have already made commitments to go visit Grandpa that night. But if I go, oh, well, we've got a commitment to visit Grandpa that night. So no, we can't. See, if you reverse that, they start to think, their brain's like, oh, they're answering the question themselves in their mind and their thinking if you give them the why first.
Yeah, that's such a simple change to make.
It is.
So in leadership, this would become then having the why we're doing what we're doing always in the front lobe of our mind, as opposed to having,
there's 2 aspects to it. One is getting the buy-in from the people you're leading, starting them with the why. Secondly, why are you in leadership?
Yeah.
What's your, and I'll give another story here. And I've used this before in a previous episode. When at one of my jobs 17, 18 years ago, I was surfing the web on my break and I came across this quote. And I'm like, that's it. That's why I want to do what I want to do. And it's from, I just forgot his name, Christmas Carol, wrote the Christmas Carol. Dickinson, thank you. Charles Dickinson. He said, no one is useless in this world who lightens the burden of it for anyone else. So I can help lighten someone's burden by helping them carry it, or I can help the burden become lighter by helping them grow. I said, that's my why. That's why I lead. That's why I involved myself in the programs. I involve myself. I take on the projects I take on. I serve in the church the way I serve my church. I teach at my church the way I teach at my church. I do that because I want to help people lighten their burden or help them become stronger so their burden gets lighter. Right? So, but what is your why? You know,
Super important.
super important. And there's a whole nother way to go about, and maybe we'll do an episode on finding your why.
Yeah, I think finding your why that would be an entire episode in of itself.
That's another episode. But that's the point. Number 4 is knowing your why. It's really key. Really, really key.
Go ahead with point number 5.
Yeah. Number 5 here, stay curious.
To grow your persistence, stay curious.
Stay curious. None of us have arrived. None of us are there. There's always more tools we can learn. And that can seem exhausting at one point, right? But it can also be very beneficial. Just it's that growth mindset versus goal mindset. If I have a goal, I got to accomplish this. Yeah. But I have a growth mindset. It's how far can I go?
You know, and you think even Chronicles of Narnia.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes we look at, you know, this is maybe neither here nor there, but this is what pops in my mind. You have these kids who are curious, they're playing, and they fall through the fear. You would have ran back the way you came.
Yeah.
Curiosity led her to
continue on,
to keep going. Oh, what is this? Where am I? You know, what is it? Animals do the same thing. Their world opens up. Little children, their world opens up because of they're curious. And I think as adults, we lose that.
We do.
We're like, oh, I've got my job, I've got my career,
We've got responsibilities. We got wounds that we're dealing with. We protect ourselves from happening again. We get hurt relationships, and then we tend to
curiosity is the first thing to go.
Curiosity is the first thing to go. I agreed.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm really glad to see you got the green memo today. So you look good.
Oh, hey,
dashing, actually.
I didn't even notice that till you said that. That's funny. Yeah. So stay curious.
Number 5 is stay curious.
So again, those steps to growing our persistence, we believe these are 5 super helpful steps, and we'll give you a bonus one here. Know the value of effort, develop a willing to pay the price mindset, embrace failure, know your why, and stay curious. Those are the 5 steps. I think there's a Haitian proverb that says...
This is good. I like this. Yeah. I like this a lot.
Yeah, we were happy we found this one. Behind mountains are more mountains. In other words, there is no path to success that doesn't include obstacles.
Yeah.
So that for me is even if I decided I didn't want to do this because of the obstacles, because of the setbacks, because of the challenges as it presents to staying persistent, no matter what else I go and do, I'm going to face obstacles.
Yeah.
So again, perhaps looking at these 5 steps, especially when it comes to this, is knowing why I'm doing this. You know, is that going to help me to stick it out? I definitely believe, because there is no other option that's not going to include at least some hurdles.
Life has obstacles, period.
It really does.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can look at this at parenting. You can look at this as your leadership positions, your job. Every day, we face obstacles, and I think it's definitely a mindset and an attitude that's going to be super important, at least for me.
There is an atypical situation that I'd like to talk about. It's worth mentioning here. Sometimes persistence is easier when the stakes are higher. In that, I mean, we have no choice. And I think of that time my wife went through cancer. Going through the surgery, going through chemo,
you had
no
to.
choice.
You had to go through it.
We had to do it.
Right.
This is just, it has to be done. There's no alternative, right? So it made the persistence obvious. I won't say easier. It's tempted to say easier, but it's more obvious. So it removed all other options because it was so obvious what the persistence was.
Do you think, though, this isn't even really script or anything, but do you think when you hit those atypical moments where you're going to go through it no matter what you do, come kicking and screaming, or come with a growth mindset, to think of a loved one going through what your wife went through, to think of like what my dad's,
dad's going through,
going through and potentially facing. How do you then, is it looking at some of these steps? Let's get real here for a second. Because some people do, they come kicking and screaming.
Yep.
And I think, and it's easier to talk about this when we're removed from a situation, like no doubt about that.
Yeah.
don't talk to me when I'm going in the middle of it. Just be a shoulder to cry on. But I think it's worth mentioning when you come kicking and screaming into to face a hurdle, it's only going to be harder to face said hurdle. Whereas if you have these mindsets and you have this goal in mind, you know your why, you're curious, you've embraced failure in the past, you've got to know the value of your effort mindset, you're willing to pay the price. When you come at these obstacles in life and in work and in leadership with that mindset, I think the growth part of it does come a little easier. You
create more tension and more obstacles for yourself if you're trying to fight the growth process. And this is a really good part of our chapter of our book that we're trying to write. So
yeah, exactly.
But at the same time, there's been times when I started kicking and screaming, and then I had a conversation with Jared or someone else, and just helped me process through the information, and the information got down to my heart, kind of thing, right? And I'm like, all right, I'll surrender. I'll do this. I still didn't like it. I still enjoy it. I still wasn't happy about it. But I surrendered to the process of growing through it. Yeah. And I think because of that, there was a greater return on the other end. Not that everything came up all roses and wonderful, and there was a nice red carpet in front of me of hey, this is smooth sailing from now on. But it was that whole mindset of I surrendered to the growth. I am grown. I am now better. I am now stronger. I am now more capable. It's kind of what we just talked about a moment ago. It's about looking back and saying, okay, I can handle this now more. That hard work back there that was the hardest. And what I'm doing now is nothing compared to that. So I can do this. That's the benefit when you surrender to the growth.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that kind of leads really to a really good, our bonus tip. We told you we'd have one.
Yeah, we do.
Thanks for sticking around. Here's your bonus tip.
Might not be what you expect, though.
Yeah, it might not be what you expect, but practice grace. Practice grace, specifically the ability to forgive yourself when you fail or when you don't think you're doing a great job. Yeah. Practicing grace, specifically with ourselves, we think is really, really crucial. I'm for myself in my leadership role at the church where I serve. Practicing grace with myself is a big deal. Leading a team, having a couple hundred people looking to me as a leader, public speaking, when it doesn't go the way that I thought it was going to go, and I'm a little frustrated, after teaching, and there's an ability, or I should say, there's a practice of practicing grace that really does help if you learn how to do it correctly. So, Bill, kind of explain the process for you, and then I'll take a turn.
I think it's human nature that it's a lot easier to forgive our friends if they make a mistake, an honest mistake that's not malicious. They didn't intend to do harm. It was just a mistake. No big deal, right? But when we are the ones that make the mistake, that kind of stabs us in our pride a bit. It's like, oh my gosh, I screwed up. I can't believe I did that. It's not what I intended, right? So there's this idea of, yes, we should practice grace with others. We're all on the journey. None of us arrived. We're all trying to do the best we can in the roles we have and learn and grow from it. But when it comes to ourselves, sometimes that's the greatest hurdle is like, oh, wow, I can't, oh my, and all those emotions, right? Yeah. Practicing grace is like, I made a mistake.
I'm a human.
I'm human. I'm going to grow through this. That is my choice. I'm going to intentionally pursue at the moment.
Yeah, and you see this a lot too. Again, I use movies and things like that where you got the superhero who someone dies on his watch and he blames himself or she, and they go into hiding and they spend a season of sulking and beating themselves up for their failure or their perceived failure and whatnot. And you always see that, I think, in some of the movies and whatnot. And what ends up happening when we don't learn to practice grace with ourselves is we end up not only hurting ourselves, but hurting those around us. Yeah. And I think it's super important to learn, hey, I need to be able to just forgive myself, pick myself back up and move on. Because the longer we stay in that place, we end up hurting other people.
Yeah, if we do, own up to it. If we hurt somebody, apologize and Seek forgiveness and restitution, and
So practice grace with yourself.
practice grace.
So Bill, let's review them before we wrap this
Yeah,
up. Review these 5 steps, the bonus tip, and we'll wrap it up.
Like one more time, again, the 5 steps. Know the value of effort. Your effort does have value behind it, so it's worthwhile. 2, develop a willing to pay the price mindset, right? What is the price and what's on the other side of yes if I pay that price?
Can I get it done?
Yeah, get it done kind of thing. Thirdly, embrace failure, or fail forward, as a lot of people like to term. Learn from the mistakes. Okay, I'm not a failure. I just had a failure. What do I need to learn from this and start implementing, right?
Exactly.
Number 4, know your why. Why are you doing what you do? What's your motivation, right? I found mine. What's yours? And then again, maybe we'll do an episode on that, just help you finding your why. And then number 5, stay curious. Is that mindset of being teachable? Have I arrived? No. Okay, so then I need to remain teachable. What don't I know yet?
What else can I learn? How
What
else
else
can I
can I
grow?
learn? It's that growth mindset rather than a goal mindset. And again, lastly, the bonus tip, practice grace with yourself. You're worth it.
I think one of the most important things to think through is the fact that you'll never see a successful person who didn't exercise persistence.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I mean, Julie Andrews has a fantastic quote. She says, perseverance, right, is failing 19 times and succeeding the 20th. That's it. I mean, persistence literally is failing 19 times and then succeeding the 20th.
Yeah.
You'll never see a successful person who didn't go through this, who doesn't know how to be persistent. It just doesn't work that way. So as we wrap this up, we definitely want you to benefit from this. So we got a little call to action for you, and it's pretty simple. Think through these 5 steps, and then start implementing 1 or 2 of them.
Not all at once.
Not all at once.
Right? Pick one where you get the biggest splash. Right?
Yeah, biggest buck for your whatever it is. I don't even know what that saying is.
What's the biggest rock that's going to cause the biggest splash?
Rock, the biggest splash, yeah.
For your growth.
Bang
of
for your buck.
implementation.
That's the one I was looking for.
Bang for your buck.
Biggest
There
bang
you
for your buck.
That's true.
But yeah, so think through the 5 steps and then start implementing one of them. And let us know how it goes for you. I mean, and if you think of a step that maybe you thought was super important, you were hoping to hear, drop us a comment. We'd love to hear it.
Absolutely.
And flesh it out for ourselves too. We're still learning ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks so much for tuning in. We appreciate you. Take care.
See you next time.
Bye.